I went to Humber, and it was probably the best thing I could have done, because I very quickly realized that that was not really me.
So
That
that
was
was
not,
Humber for
yeah,
music.
yeah, Humber for music, Humber for guitar specifically. And I just very quickly realized that it wasn't for me, and that the production thing was something more that I was interested in. Um, and songwriting and creating music was something that I was really interested in. But being a session guitar player and playing, at some place like the Beef and Bird or something like that on a Tuesday night, I was just like, no, man, that's not my trip. So, and hats off to the people that can do that. I just was never interested. So I left Humber and went to a place called the Harris Institute and studied recording engineering for a year. But I had a little bit of experience in a recording studio, recording like a professional recording studio as a guitar player, and and that got me hooked. That just absolutely got me hooked. Like, it was always kind of like dipping my toe in the water with my little 4 tracks and things like that. But this actually got me hooked, and I thought, this is the coolest place in the world. If I can spend my work days in an environment like this is the greatest thing ever. So I left Humber. I went to the Harris Institute. I graduated from the Harris Institute. And that was back, I want to say 1993 or something like this. So that would have been in the days when I think there were like 200 recording studios in Toronto.
The last time the Montreal Canadiens won a Stanley Cup.
There you go. Actually, yes, yes. And it would have been. And I remember those playoffs.
That would be the last time a Canadian team won the cup, I think, right?
Correct. I believe so. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, Ottawa made it once, and I think
My
Edmonton.
boys. Yeah. Yeah. We got to the end against Anaheim, I think, when they won the
Right.
cup.
Actually, that was one of the things that we bought.
2007, I think. I don't know why I know this. I'm not that into hockey, but
Yeah, but I remember that was one of the things that came up when we were discussing on that weekend when you were doing Pro Tools, is that we were both fans of Ottawa.
okay. Okay. There you go.
Remember that. Anyway, um, yeah. So I,
So you go to Harris.
I go to Harris. I come out of Harris. I get an internship at a place called Wellesley Sound, and I just became the thing that wouldn't leave. And I was like, sweep floors, fine. Do toilets, fine.
Sorry, that sounds like a song, the thing that never leaves. Come on. That fits the image of Envy of None, the thing that never leaves. There's a dark undertone.
Yeah.
Anyways, just store that in the old bank there for later.
Okay, cool. I'll keep that in my mind. See, there you go. That's artistic people. They pick up on things that other people say, and they go, oh, wait a minute, that's cool. I'm going to remember that. But yeah, I did my internship at Wellesley, and they hired me on, and I stayed, and I did nights there working on rap records.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was actually with an engineer by the name of Walter Sobchak, who trained me and was a wonderful, wonderful mentor. And but the cool thing about Walter is that he was doing all this edgy kind of rap stuff, but he was also in this world of industrial. So one day, Walter wasn't at the studio yet. We were getting ready to do an evening session, but he had a client coming over, and he was like, just make sure that you're there first, because I'm going to be a little bit late. And these guys knock on the door, and there's this big, tall British guy and another dude with like the biggest mohawk I've ever seen in my life. And it turns out it was Paul Raven, who's the bass player from Killing Joke. And so from that point, and John Bechdel, who's now one of the keyboard players and programmer for Ministry. And so from that point on, we were working on rap music and industrial. And it was like the best education ever in the history of the world, because I learned very quickly that if you put a collage of sounds together that have absolutely no relationship, eventually at some point, you'll start hearing musical undertones coming out. And I remember, and it was funny because I had a summer job in Espanola working in a pulp and paper mill. And I used to always find walking through the machinery with earplugs in really inspiring, because there was all these different rhythms that were happening, and all this crazy sort of like music that was happening that these machines were making. And these guys taught me that stuff was valid. So that was a really influential period from there. And then after that, I began working for Hypnotic Records. And did some in-house engineering for them and a little bit of production for them, and then moved on from there to Iguana Recording and became the chief engineer there. And that's when I started working with a lot of, well, no, I guess actually even Hypnotic. I did Blue Rodeo with them. And that probably would have been the first big gig for me.
Blue Rodeo is so good. Just
Yeah.
maybe a week ago, I listened to is it 5 Days in May, the album? Even though the song is like 5 Days in July is like the single or something. But man, that album is so good. Like their harmonies, they're in no rush, like just like the slow groove and the longer songs.
I think that would have been about the time that I worked with them. I did there's a indigenous gentleman named, I think it was Leonard Pelche, that was wrongfully convicted in America for killing, either it was an FBI person or a police officer or something, but it was a bogus conviction, and they spearheaded a record to sort of bring light of this, and they had all of these basically the Canadian who's who at the time singing on it, and I was fortunate enough to engineer a couple of those sessions and do a mix on one of the songs, and that was kind of the thing that I thought, oh, I can hang with these guys. This is cool.
There's a legendary venue in Ottawa called the Rainbow, and
Yeah.
I think it used to be called the Rainbow Bistro. I think it's just the Rainbow now. But the pandemic has just slaughtered all the live event venues. There's been no venues. They still have to pay the bills, but there's no income coming in from live events. So the Rainbow Bistro, or the Rainbow, has started a Kickstarter where you can buy different packages to support, and you'll get free tickets to a certain amount of concerts this year, and they'll bring in a huge act for a surprise concert that only those that contributed can go to. And Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo made a quick, like 2-minute video for the Rainbow to help raise money, saying, hey, we got our start here. We love this venue. We're supporting. We hope that you support as well. And also, I just saw there's a reporter for Billboard. Her name's Karen Bliss. She's from Toronto. I have her on Facebook, and she posted as a donor for Massey Hall, all the renovations. People could donate like $1,000 and up, and then your name is on a plaque when you walk in. So her name is there, and I believe I saw Blue Rodeo on the plaque as helping to support keep Massey Hall alive. So just all the good stuff that Blue Rodeo is doing right there.
Those guys are definitely all about giving back. I can't say I spent a couple of days with them recording them and stuff, but wonderful human beings. Just really, I know the drummer loosely, Glenn Melcham. I know him from other projects and things, and he hooked me up. Actually, there was a Canadian folk artist by the name of Hayden.
Oh, Hayden's awesome.
Yeah, we did a soundtrack. This was because of Glenn. He suggested that Hayden come work with us at Hypnotic. We did a soundtrack song for a Steve Buscemi film called Trees Lounge, which was just a blast to work on. But so, and I think I've run cross paths with Glenn a few other times because Andy Curran, who's the bass player and I want to say primary songwriter and be a nun, Glenn was his drummer for the longest time in one of his bands. So there's like this really weird small community of people that we all know each other.
Yeah, as I talk to more and more successful artists on the podcast, a lot of them are from Canada. Everyone knows everyone. I talked to this guy and they got their start from this person that was a guest who opened for this person who played guitar with that person. And, in Canada, I keep getting the same people that mixed and produced the albums across all the artists that I've recorded. So
it's a small community.
It's small community. I got into Hayden when I was taking audio engineering when I was 18. So I guess this is like 2004 or something. Hayden was big in Canada. Something was the album As Bad as It Seems, or that was one of the singles. And the song you're talking about, Trees Lounge, that was one of his bigger songs, wasn't it? It's one of his more known songs.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a video for it, and it had characters from the movie in it. And and that was back in the days of, like, if you go and listen to it now, it's a pretty loose sounding recording. Like we did it in a day and mixed it that night, and it was gone. And the next time I heard it, it was on television, and I was kind of like, oh, all right, that's interesting. But that was also back in the days when everybody was doing grunge and trying to make raw recordings and all that stuff. So that's kind of the world I came up in.
That's the Nirvana effect.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. without question. And it was like every record you would make, you would try and make it more grungy than the previous record. It's kind of like, I think by the time we got to about 2000s, we were like, what are we doing? This is just silly.
Yeah, it culminated with new metal, and then we restarted again. We broke down the foundation and started again after new metal. I forgot that I had listened to Hayden back in the day, and then a few years ago, he put out a new album, and he had a single called "Let's Break Up" that I love. I have it on my great songs playlist, which is such an honor. You know, on Spotify, I have this great songs playlist, and he's still got some great tunes that he's putting out. And I guess the last story about Blue Rodeo, I didn't know that my history was so entrenched with Blue Rodeo, but um, I worked at a place called CD Warehouse when I was, I don't know, 18. And basically the way that I helped is people would come in and say that they're looking for a certain song or a band and they don't know the name and they have barely any info. And I was pretty good at guessing that stuff. And the one that is my favorite is an older couple came in and they said, we're looking for a Blue Rodeo song. I'm like, okay, like they have like 10 albums. And then it's kind of slow. And I'm like, oh, that's all they could give me was they had a Blue Rodeo song that was kind of slower. I was like, all right, well, that's 98% of Blue Rodeo. And then we found it was one of the bigger hits, but I thought that was kind of amusing.
It's kind of slow. Yeah, well, you're going to get that with those guys.
Well, that's Blue Rodeo. Yeah. So you were talking about kind of getting some mentorship at the different studios that you worked at. And speaking of mentorship, I have some kind words here sent in from a past guest of the podcast. So this comes in from Kevin Dietz, who is the special guest on episode number 42 of the podcast. For our listeners that didn't check out that episode, that don't know who he is, he's an engineer and producer. He's worked with Billy Talent, Alexis on Fire, Silverchair, a lot of great artists. He's amazing at what he does. This is what he has to say about Alf. He says, on top of being a great engineer, Alf is also an excellent teacher. He not only taught me signal flow and the technical aspect of how studios functions, but he also imparted some valuable wisdom about making your way as an audio engineer and the industry in general. He told me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard: be the type of person that people want to work with. Alf would always tell it like it is, and he made you feel like you could do it too, if you put in the work. I'm grateful for his mentorship all those years ago as a student of the craft, trying to get my start in the world of audio engineering. So that's from Kevin Dietz.
Oh, that's so kind. That's very kind of him. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kevin.
We're talking about, I got that great advice when I was younger that's helped me with my work ethic. You gave him some great advice that's helped him along the way. And then I'm curious if you have any advice for our listeners, if there's anyone considering becoming an audio engineer or anyone that is a new, younger, less experienced audio engineer, any advice to help them find their way as a professional?
I think, God, it's such a different world now. Like it's such an incredibly different world, and we'll talk about it later. But our record is a really great example of how much the world has changed in terms of just how to make a record and what's going on in that world. I think you kind of have to find your niche now, and I think you have to kind of figure out what it is that you want to do and just become incredibly good at doing it. Which basically, there's no real way to do that other than just working really, really hard. I strongly suggest, and I mean, if listeners haven't figured this out, I do have an academic background, and I do teach. And so I have to say, if you're really interested in going down this route, learn how to do it first. Learn how to do it technically the right way. And then from that point on, you can bridge out into whatever style and genre it is that you want to work on. But I do believe that there's a lot of validity in going forward and doing something properly and figuring out exactly how it is that you want to approach your career. That comes almost secondary to learning how to do it first and learning how to do it the right way. And that could be with a laptop and a computer. It could be with microphones. It could be working in a recording studio, whatever. Sadly, there's not as many gigs in recording studios these days as there was when I first started. Like I said, when I first started, I think there was like 200 studios in Toronto. Like you could almost pick whichever one you wanted to go to as an intern. And if you didn't get a gig there, you would definitely get a gig somewhere else, and so on and so forth. So now it's not like that. So
Do you think that's because of the rise of the home recording and the digital software and recording apps on your phone, that the people that used to save up their money to spend in recording studios can do, 80% of their project at home and then come in for a great sounding drum recording or something like that?
Exactly. And the reality is you still have to make that great home recording, you still have to know what you're doing. But also, let's face it, the music's changed. And if you look on Billboard right now, like how many songs on Billboard have like real drums or real guitar or real anything? And a lot of it is just coming off a laptop and it's programming. And so it's almost like skipping an entire step and almost going right into the mix world and the production world versus, coming up the way I did, which was learn how to put a microphone on an instrument and learn about how the sound goes from this microphone to the mixing console to the recording device. That, there's a lot of styles of music where that doesn't happen anymore, and it's more signal, like virtual signal flow. So it's like things going inside a computer, and it goes from this track to this plug into whatever, and this is a different world. But regardless, I think, learning how to do it properly is definitely the best start that you could possibly have. And then trying to figure out, and introduce yourself to people that are doing what you want to do and try and get in with them and learn off them, because that's the other thing. You could learn how to do it from a school, but you don't really start learning until you get out there and actually start doing it and interacting with people, because that's a big part of it too. Just that whole idea of being in a room with people and being able to talk to them. And again, and I'm just going to echo what I said to Kevin, but it just being that person that people want to work with is really, really important. Because, man, when you finally do get in a recording studio, it's a small room. And if you're giving off the wrong vibes, boy, do people pick up on that real quick. So,
Yeah. So when I graduated in audio engineering, I found out quickly how important people skills and communication skills are, because you could be a great engineer or producer, but if you can't get past that first interview, right? The interview is you talking. So it's like no matter what you do, you gotta get across in the right way before being able to show your skills.
I've brought him up a couple of times. I'm going to bring him up again. And Kevin Bright said to me once, he said, it's not really important to be the best guitar player on the planet. Just be a really good guy. And if you can kind of play, then that's cool. That's more important. And I've taken that with me. Um, he wasn't saying don't work, and he wasn't saying don't learn your craft. But what he was saying is that once you do learn your craft and once you have put in the hours, like, make sure that you stay humble and easy to work with. And I think that's probably the most important thing, because
So
I'd rather be in a room. Sorry. I'd rather be in a room with somebody that, was less talented and humble and worked really hard than somebody who's got all the talent in the world and, is not somebody you want to hang with.